For my entire life, I have seen wrong and good deeds go both punished and unpunished. But those who only did wrong always eventually were punished. Now, I don't think in that way. Ragnar Vix, commoner guildsman of Venetian Albusk. War is where warriors go to win or die, to protect or to survive. Yet in a time of need, many warriors can come to aid us. It's just that we are useful for our emperor. I think karma, although without a proper meaning, is a word I can use to describe what's coming to our arrogant and self-centered emperor. May the Great Mother bless us with salvation. Isord Magnus Belia, Noble General of Vinicia. Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today we're looking at what if civilization starts over to human scenario, Age of Kingdoms. Now the Age of Kingdoms has with this episode officially ended, and the age that will arrive is, let's just say, going to be one grand one. As we see, the age of conflict has arrived. And in this age of conflict, we will see many tensions heightening, more nations falling and coming into existence, and many more collapsing or, well, falling apart. Welcome to Age of Conflict Wixo to human scenario. I hope you guys will like this video. If you do, then like the video. That will help the video pass on to so many people. It's not even recognizable how many. And I'm gonna thank you guys for the very much appreciated. We passed finally 41 subscribers. It's like a big milestone for me. But let's go and get into this video. Thank you. Also, if you like the video, subscribe. As I talked in the last video, Vinicia has been struck with the plague that caused them to lose one of their crown colonies, one of their first one as well. With this, we also see that the surrounding nations up north and down south will start to break away from their influence, and slowly we do see something very, very important, as in this merchant guild branch over here, this nation right here will, oh god, that's not what I expected, but these two nations will give up their guild's membership with Vinicia to become this nation's thing. While this nation is still mostly Venetian, it starts to see that this Venetian part starts to slowly dissolve, and eventually in a couple of months it sees a large scandal as money is being siphoned from this country to aid in Venetia's problems, eventually granting this guy its only thing. In addition, we do see many of these nations over here are very unwilling to help Vinicia in anything, and even over here Vinicia loses again another partner, although this time to a very unexpected people, as we quickly see that the Mesoan Traders Guild quickly starts to grow in number. And Naplosia's merchant guild is also booming, as it takes now most of central and southern Italy. With that being said, we do see that Vinicia will see for the first time someone funding rebellions. And the first rebellion that we'll see pop up is the rebellion of Alta. Alta is this. It's not Malta, but it's called Alta because this region is technically still Messana, but it's called Alta by the Venetians. And Alta quickly declares independence. Although it does so, it is quickly attacked multiple times, but with the help of mercenaries and volunteer troops, it manages to gain independence. And after that, it quickly applies to join the Naplosian kingdom. We quickly see once it does, it becomes very much a beautiful sight to see Naplosia gaining territory back in these regions, even though it didn't have that region of under their control. In agreements with many other things. We do see that over here, so these two islands will agree to make a front against, well, Venetian exploitation, as the Venetians are currently supplying their own nation's food supply, since the radishes all died, and trying to grow new ones will only cause bad stuff, and other nations have just cut off any trade with them for radishes or anything like that, or, well, they have kind of cut off all their borders with Vinicia. And we quickly see that this will hurt Venetian trade and dominance in the region. And quickly we will see that Vinicia will start to see some problems, as over here we quickly see that the people over here quickly joined the rebellion, trying to gain as much territory back as possible. Now Sparta might want to take this back, but the problem is that Sparta already lost this area due to some Venetian meddling and Spartan incompetence. And we now see that it's Venetian meddling and incompetence that has backfired on themselves, because not only does this nation up here quickly decide to become the leaders of this whole thing, they decide that they will unite all of the Grecian population, and so they basically become the center point of this rebellion, although they're very different. With this rebellion sparking up, we do see that this rebellion quickly takes over two towns, as these towns have been mostly Albanian throughout their existence. And we quickly see that with these Albanian towns quickly joining the rebellion and cutting off all the south, this army over here will have to deal with both a naval and land invasion, as both forces over here and forces from the mainland are unable to stop any of this. The simple reason for not being able to stop this is, one, because, well, the people over here don't like Venice anymore, and we quickly see that in the battle of Albus, that being this town over here, it's called Albus, we see many Venetians falling, and quickly the first army is pushed back over here, seeing as it's unable to defend even its own lands. With this area taken, and the rebellion has two choices: go after the weakened army and stop it from recovering, or go after the northern lands, which are mostly Albanian and would definitely join them, helping to boost their troops' morale and all of that. But they knew that if they went after the army, the second army, which is already starting to arrive, as it has already, since the first news arrived and the news that these guys had a bit of a problem, had gone from here to the capital and then set sail, and is now halfway to the area over here. With that said, we quickly see that many of these regions will quickly start to fall under some of the rebels' control, and these hundreds of rebels that are over here taking these territories are very much able to do so because, well, some things are happening. In tandem with that, we do see that a northern part of Venice's control over here is cut off, and we quickly see that all communication and open talks with communication roads basically are cut off with this town. And we quickly see, as that town kinda has a problem over here, it's two villages over here that keep it fed and supplied with anything they need is quickly cut off when both fall. And we quickly see that with the falling of that, the town also gives up, and quickly we see this rebellion takes over the towns and takes over as much territory as possible, quickly becoming pretty strong but also pretty dangerous. As the rebellion moves, it goes in from all sides at once, overwhelming the Venetian forces. Although the Venetians at this point have connected both of their armies up, it has been already too late, as the first army was forced in the into the surrounding waters, and most of their troops were destroyed. And we quickly see that due to this, both armies will start to use the navy to try and land. They will start the first army will start a campaign to take back these islands, while the first army will try to take back the mainland. With this falling, we quickly see that many of the Venetian holdings will start to see rebellious movements. But we quickly see that once the Venetians manage a counterattack over here and do manage to land, the second army sends a large force to garrison and both move into these areas, quickly taking another town and pushing into these regions. They almost even took that town, but unfortunately they did see some problems, as continuous fighting for these border villages caused them to lose sight of their main goal, and quickly they kinda lost the north. With the north kinda lost, they are unable to supply themselves from the north and from the south, as quickly the Albanian captured the captured Venetian ships are used against their own ships, and we quickly see that the Venetian ships that were captured are now being used against them. We quickly see that the Albanians will also use the first time a strategy has been used like this. Well, it's like something similar to a cut-off and, well, breakthrough strategy. They will break through in one place and try to attack from there. We also see that for these two towns that are currently fighting, there are around half of the army, the second army is kind of cut in half, as both towns are currently fighting for their existence. Over here we quickly see that a continued presence from Venice is being pushed back, as only the peninsula is left over for Venice to hold. Even though Venice is trying so desperately to hold on to these, it sees that a rebellion might brew in its own territory, and a rebellion does brew. Quickly we see in the south, one of the old nations that was over here quickly decides that it wanted its independence, and with that we quickly see that the independence war of this nation shall begin. After its large assimilation, it lost its national desire to become a full-on nation again, and we quickly see that once it regained it, it was able to get more and more angry at the Venetians through time. The Venetians weren't thinking of a war starting on their own soil, or, well, they weren't even ready for that. So when they started their campaign over here, they thought the people would like it. Although as soon as they took this village back and were starting to push forward, they got news of that and had to pull back the first army. But before the first army could move out, it was dealt a heavy blow, as it was because as it was moving towards the Napoleonian coast to then snake across it to literally invade from the south, it saw a large typhoon hit it, and it went of course. Eventually it did manage to get back on course, but due to this they were late by a few months, and during those few months we actually see something very dangerous happen, and that is that not only did the rebellion keep pushing, it kept on winning, as we quickly see that the wins that they do garner are very strong, and they quickly even take this town, causing it to kind of jump over to their side, and once it does, they manage to take over the entire south of Vinicia. Although Vinicia is seeing its first civil war, it hasn't seen something like this in a while. While that was going on, over here in Albusk, we quickly see that the southern town quickly falls to a very large siege, and we quickly see over here the fall of this town is inevitable, as the gates are knocked up on, and eventually it falls, and we quickly see that from it a peace treaty is forced into Venetia's hand, and we quickly see that northern Albania will take those territories, and southern Albania, being still a bit different from any other Albanian nation, takes these areas. Although these nations are technically different from each other, we quickly see that this nation over here takes over these areas, and with the fall of the vassals, showing that even an empire can fall if pushed to the brink, it shows that these guys are not able to defend themselves. But once the second army was able to defend, we see that the first army was already heading over here, and around this time a third army had been levied, although the third army was only a levying army, meaning it's not a full army, it's a temporary one. Once the second army arrived in the ports, it got news that the third army was setting up its operations zone and was starting to actually try and operate in some way. So the third army would take its place as trying to move in. While that was going on, the first army, who had been for months had been for months, like multiple months, had been on the road, had to be recalled as a rebellion in the Croatian areas were starting to brew, and once the second army arrived, they were able to move out. But as the second army arrived to defend that town over here, we see that the third army suddenly found itself becoming a coupist army, meaning it would gain this grey color. And the coup for the forces of the coup would quickly try and take over as much territory as possible around the capital. With the capital in basically no shape or form to defend, we see that the forces that were trying the coup over here had reached over to the rebellion over here that had actually started to win their independence war. Although it was subtle, this war was still brewing, and with a full-on fight over here going on for this nation's entire existence, because they have been basically trying to defend their own territory while not trying to be taken out. And we see that due to the taking of this town, these guys were able to hold out for a bit longer, but once the first army arrived, they were starting to see some defeats and started to see some decline. But once the news of the coup hit both armies, both the first and second army, we quickly see that the southern army over here, being the second army, had to abandon its defense, mostly abandon it, because some problems would be still existing. But we quickly see that it would have to attack the rebels as quickly as possible, and we quickly see that once the second army reached the capital, they were almost besieged and attacked full on. But we see that the third army's general would be killed, and it turned out the third army's general was actually a high noble, and he decided that it would be better if he ruled the country. Although his thoughts were of good intention, we quickly see that his entire motive would fall apart as his forces would be destroyed, and the army that was under his control would eventually be forced into full-on retreat. Eventually they would be forced to be around this town, and once that town fell, the Venetians could get back to the war. During this time, we actually see that the second army was pushed back from this town and had to hold that. And seeing as that was basically the last town before this, and the first army was hastily recalled to defend, and then was put back on defensive duty, the Venetians had kinda hit themselves in the head there. Just the head for now. Just the head. For now. And the very, very strong rebel forces would actually move quite well across these regions. Quickly, we also see that this region over here decided to join that nation, becoming quite important for that nation, as they have also begun a sudden campaign to take out that town that kind of was the last place that the coupists were. And their plan is to take over the coup who did the coup, and try to convince them to join their army. That's their basically their whole entire game plan. Over here, as we see, this rebellion quickly starts to move. The first time in one of the rebellion forces were actually kind of smart was when they decided in the battle for this lake over here. We see that they actually sent some of their guys in boats to flank the battle over here, the forces of the second army, and we quickly see that due to the confusion during the battle, the second army would lose their positions, and quickly we also see that most of their regions up north and towards the west would be lost, and the occupation forces would start to occupy these areas. Although the armies would be able to hold out a bit longer, Vinicia was starting to fall and was seeing a decline. The third army, which was relatively new, was starting to gain experience, yes, but at a slow pace, and this army had to kind of pull back to defend that town. With only 2 towns and a smaller city left, we see that the armies were forced to take their command and put them in the areas over here, trying to at least defend them. But in a stroke of luck, the rebels of the green area decided to make a dumb choice and only take the villages, not go after the armies, because they thought the armies would be basically crippled at this point. A bad choice not to do so, because they quickly just cut off all of their logistics and supplies. And once they did so, the rebels were forced to pull back as the forces over here were annihilated. And eventually, we see that the third army eventually gathers enough experience, enough fighting power to actually start attacking. And once it starts its offensive, we quickly see that it manages to do a lot. When the third army actually starts to do quite well, we see that even some of the second army and first army troops are kind of jealous, because at least the third army is able to defend and hold these areas. We also see that these areas are trying to hold on to the areas that they can't have, but over here in the north they already gave up these regions. But the story for this thing is the opposite for this, because once this guy did a stupid thing, this guy did a stupid thing later and did a smart thing first. And the smart thing was not only going after this town, but going after the villages too, which was quite smart for them, and they eventually even cut off the third army's escape route. Even though they did have a port in that village, town, that port was set ablaze by partisans. And we quickly see that the first army would be caught in an ambush. Quickly, this ambush would turn into a deadly fight for survival. And in the fight for survival, we see that the first army is almost fully wiped out. But in the nick of time, the port was fixed and the ships managed to arrive. Once they arrived in the few ports, towns, villages over here, they met up with the third army, who, to be honest, seem more grizzled and more battle hardened than they do. So they're kind of astonished. But we quickly see that the second army had eventually also pushed back the rebels, who had at this point seen no way of getting through at the capital. But eventually, we see that 2 nations have decided to join this war. Applausia will start to join this war in the terms that it sends troops and money to these 2 nations, helping them actually grow. And eventually, we do see that with this extra money and extra help, this nation does manage to actually start a good counteroffensive, although it's only regional. Meaning in some regions it's more effective, while in other regions it doesn't even go that far. Although the attack over here is quite successful, once they take this village, port village, we quickly see that the villages over here are forced to submit to the rebellion. And eventually Napoleon decides to declare war upon Vinicia. Vinicia was not ready for this, but at least they had the first army and third armies to defend the south, and second army to also defend them, with their navy defending the bay over here. Right? Well, once the Napoleonian army arrived, which, let me just say, are not the best of fellows, you don't want to mess with them. We quickly see that basically the first army over here, that is these guys, the Napoleonians, quickly arrived in the bay, and once it did, it used its armored ships to ram and then use a bit of land warfare tactics against the naval warfare. And we quickly see that with this, the first army's forces are over here are defeated, and they're forced a bit back. But once the Napoleonians arrive, it's already kinda, how do I say this, late for anyone who's trying to escape, as these few villages that are over here are captured, and the people in them are also captured. But the people are more than overjoyed, as the Napoleonians actually had food and actually cared about the people. Now, I'm just gonna say it's kinda hard to see anything like that actually happen, but eventually an assassination will take place, where some of the forces over here surround the capital and decide that, you know what, it's about time, we are starving ourselves, our nation does not listen to us, what's the point in living? And eventually they take over the capital. And we see that in the taking over of the capital, they storm into the king's room, who is with his mistresses, and they cut off his head. He is found dead the next morning, and the perpetrators are not found. Although the king does have many mistresses, he never fathered a child, nor did he have a child yet. But we see that eventually an heir from his older brother will come to the throne, and the heir will be more benevolent and more tired of this war than anyone else, and he will declare that he will surrender and give these nations independence as they wish. In this battle, we quickly see that we actually saw that many battles were fought for these regions, and we do see that the people over here eventually got their own homelands back. This nation finally got that area back. This nation finally got one of their oldest territories that they lost in like so long ago. Everyone's very happy because eventually the fall of these guys kind of just helped these guys actually exist in a good way. Also, this guy over here kind of fell. Don't ask who did it. Ask the guy up north who took over. But yeah, with Florence actually now being quite strong, the Napoleonians putting on a large list of demands, and the southern areas down here becoming... I'd like to give this over to Venice, but that will still make them look a bit weird. So how about we have Napoleon demanding for a small duchy over here to be created, and once it is created, Napoleon just demands for the areas over here to be divided between Florence and this guy. And we quickly see that Florence will take the bulk of the lands, while Genoa will take these areas. Over here we also see that this nation quickly takes the northern regions and creates quite a buffer area. Venice will have to also give up its territories up north to one of their generals, who decided to actually join the forces over here in the early fight. And we quickly see that with this, Croatia also takes over these regions, but gives back this town over here because it's kind of more significant to the Venetians. Venetia, after Venetia's fall, it sees that many of its people that were in its army just left its army, and we quickly see that it loses its first and second armies, and its third army is officially dissolved, and it's now on the back foot. And we quickly see with all of this being done and all of the problems that have been going on through this video, we quickly see that Carthage will begin something new, as Vinicia has lost its large navy, large lands, and large empire, now being carved up and made into many. We will see that with the aid of some other nations, except, well, that being Libya and Sinai, Carthage will go on their first conquest over here. Their first ever reclamation conquest, the liberation of all and true Carthaginian lands. And we quickly see, once they start this war, the war of the Cartho-Moroccan War shall see its war end in only a few days, as once the forces had already reached this army over here, this army had already capitulated over to Carthage, and this war would become known as the shortest war of all. And we quickly see that the Carthaginian Empire would quickly take over these areas and take over all the regions. With that also being said, they would set up a puppet over here, although this puppet would be a bit harder to control. At least they would be, well, their puppet. And with this being done, we see that the first army of Carthage, actually this guy will become the second army, and officially for the first time in a long time will be the second army of Carthagia. And we quickly see that Carthagia has now become very long. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys liked the video, and if you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, as we saw 2 events happen in this video that are very important to the plot. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys.